I'm really happy to be here today talking to my good friends Sophie and Stanter. And all three of us have lived with long-term health conditions for a very long time. So we're going to be discussing the kind of benefits of the heals approach, looking at our nutrition, how we move our bodies, a place of awareness, place of love, and the place of sleep. And we'll be doing this hopefully being very honest. I'm sure we'll all be very honest, both about the benefits of these areas, these domains, but also some of the pitfalls that we've experienced when we've tried to engage with these themes in our own lives. Yeah, so I'm wanting to do this so it's not just theory, but you're hearing the actual lived experience of us three aging women who've lived with health conditions for a lot much longer than we would like. Yeah. So Sophie, would you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your health condition?
Yeah, so hello everyone. I am Sophie, obviously, and my health condition is ankylosing spondylitis. So that's a form of inflammatory arthritis, and I've lived with it since I was in my late teens, it's about 16, 17. It's a progressive condition, and so I live with chronic pain and also increasing disability.
Hmm.
Um,
So if you don't mind me asking how old you are now, so how long you've lived with this?
I always forget this. I think I'm 54 now. So, yeah, a lot of years.
Yeah, many decades. Yeah. Okay, and Stanta, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your condition, your health condition?
Yes, certainly. Yes, Stanter. And I have rheumatoid arthritis, and I've had that since I was 15 years of age. I'm 55 now. And it became really bad very quickly from 17 years onwards, to the point where I have metal knees and metal hip. I have kind of damage in different parts of the body as a result of having the RA.
Hmm. Thank you both very much for your honesty. And I'm Vidyamala, and I've lived with spinal injuries since I was 16. So that's interesting. All three of us, um, it started around the same time. I had major surgeries when I was 17. I had a car crash when I was 23. And I'm now 62. So I've also lived with this for a very, very long time. And it's not progressive as such, but there's just the general decrepitude that comes with age. But in fact, my pain is better than it was 20 years ago with surgery and also with all the things that we're going to be talking about today. And I can see you're nodding, Stanta. So, how's your pain now compared with when you were younger?
Oh my gosh, so very different. I have, again, it's been a mix of medication, science catching up and being able to deliver kind of the medicine that's been really helpful in really reducing the activity of the RA alongside all the other work that I've done on myself. So some of it is included in what we're going to be talking about here that has really altered how I experience pain. So I have chronic pain most of the time, but it's nowhere near as extreme as it used to be from my late teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, I would say, was mostly in a fairly extreme state.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. How about you, Sophie? How's your? I know you said your condition's progressive, so
Yeah. Yeah, my progression is progressive, and I also didn't help matters by fracturing my spine about 6 years ago. So I suddenly had a big increase in my level of disability. So I would say my pain's actually increased um, on an objective level, but I manage it in a very different way. So I don't, it actually affects my life a lot less than it used to when I was younger. Um, so yeah, through mindfulness, really through my meditation practice. So even though I probably objectively have higher levels of pain and more disability, I'm less bothered by it than I was when I was younger.
that's very, very interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I can really relate to that actually, because I'm just thinking when I said when my pain's better, I was thinking, well, is it really? I get more nerve pain than I used to, but less tension and less mental struggle for sure. Yeah. So that's really great to hear a bit of our background. So the first sort of pillar that we're going to be unpacking on the program that I'm developing is awareness, because I see that as very much the foundational pillar. And then out of that comes how we approach our nutrition and movement and so on. So let's just have a little bit of a talk about how becoming aware has helped us. And what does that mean to you, becoming more aware? Like, were you not aware before you learned mindfulness, or, have you become a different kind of awareness? I don't know. How would you answer that? So perhaps first of all, over to you, Stanter.
Mhm. God, it's such an interesting question, isn't it? Because awareness is, yeah, I'm present, I'm noticing my life, and yet I can say most definitely there's a difference in the quality of my awareness from the point of view of doing mindfulness and meditations and kind of working on myself. They're kind of making a choice to look inward. So life can be all out there, busy, doing things, forcing my way through things because I wasn't really listening to what my body's needs were. I wanted to listen to the plans that I had were more important than what my body needed. And so there was this disconnect. And that made my body worse in many ways. And it made how I felt about myself worse. It made the inner critic louder. So it had all of these ramifications because there wasn't that deep, compassionate awareness of what was really unfolding in my life as much as I didn't want it and I hated it.
Mm.
And I think with mindfulness, the very two things that really just, I would say, took my experiences to a whole new level were an understanding of acceptance. Because before that, I was just like, nothing is going to make me stop fighting this. I will fight it till the nth degree because I do not want to accept that I have this condition, that this is my forever thing. And the other was self-compassion, and it was something that I didn't really have. And I think that awareness of beginning to turn attention inwards, to notice the inner landscape was quite dark and judgmental and just really mean to myself. And I think that is really difficult to begin with when we first begin to do that because it's not all shiny and happy and wonderful. Having to kind of maybe have compassion for some of those other aspects of myself that I don't like, that perhaps I'm going to have to learn to adjust my life because the truth was I have this condition and there's no cure for it. It might get better, but there was no cure for it. And that took a long, long time, that initial recognition of what awareness was, beginning to look at my thoughts, beginning to look at my emotions, then beginning to develop these ways, coping mechanisms, and other strategies to work with that, to then be able to really give some ease to my health and my well-being.
Mm.
Mm.
Mm. Oh, thank you very much. It's very moving to hear and also very clearly articulated, and I'm sure many of us will be able to relate to that. Yeah. How about you, Sophie?
I very much relate to that as well, yes. So I think when I was younger, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was very much about denial, kind of pushing that away. I wanted to be young and just enjoy my life and not be affected by this, kind of just really just pushing it away and denying that I had it. So the awareness over the years through my mindfulness and meditation practice has been a journey, and it's been an ongoing journey on some level of acknowledgement and acceptance that this is something that I live with. And then through that, as Santa said so beautifully, through that acceptance, the ability to actually take care of myself and to be kind to myself and to do what I need and to listen to my body and to actually trust the wisdom that I have in my body, and to start to, and actually to feel kindness and care and compassion for this body that also causes me so much pain, and gratitude as well for what it still can do. So yeah, I think that's been a big part of it. And there's also something for me about the awareness of change, having been in touch, being connected, having that kind of courage, I suppose, to be with my body, to listen to it, even in the times where it's really painful and difficult, that kind of real trust and faith now that I know that I can be with it, and also that the difficult times don't last forever, that there is a change. When my condition itself has flare-ups and comes and goes, but also that everything, the conditions are always changing, so that I can have faith that I know that, and that I can be with it. And I think that's the other thing that I've developed through mindfulness and meditation and awareness. Well, the awareness that comes from that is that I do have faith in myself, that I can be with it, and I have tools that I can turn to that are really, really helpful. And I know that I have them I can call on them. There's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah, that's amazing. If I could just follow up on that, is that I think there's a stage, isn't there? There certainly was for me, like a mourning for the loss. You know, it's a death of sorts, isn't it? Because especially those years, 16, 15, 16, 17, it's like you're teenage, you're beginning to possibly go into life, you know, and explore, and then suddenly you're outside of all of that. You know, I was practically crippled at home, needing help with everything. And this whole life changed in such a drastic way that the idea of thinking that there could be something on the other side of that was just so alien, was just so, the thought wasn't even there that I could live a good life with having what I have.
And it's so amazing, you know, to see both of you now. And I think that's very encouraging for people, that one can not exactly come out the other side, but there is what you thought then as a young woman, Stanter, isn't true. That you
Not at
have
all.
found your way through it. And the thing that I'm hearing from both of you is something I've been reflecting on more and more, actually, that mindfulness builds courage. Because sometimes I think people can think of mindfulness as being quite sort of soft and wishy-washy, but it builds tremendous strength, because you both articulated so well, learning to be with the situation that, you know, when we're in it can seem unbearable, but that one can learn to be with it and then realize, oh, it's not everything. And as you said, Sophie, everything's changing all the time. Yeah, I mean, if I think about awareness for myself, looking back, I think before I was introduced to mindfulness, I don't think I was aware at all in terms of sort of conscious self-awareness of my mind and my impulses and my behavior. I think I was just living. I was just living as a kind of automaton in a way. I was just totally reactive to what was happening. And actually, I remember quite clearly when I learned mindfulness, or at very, very early days, and I went out for a coffee in a cafe on Ponsonby Road in Auckland, which is where I lived. And I had this coffee, and then I felt all buzzy afterwards. And I remember this kind of, oh no, this is the kind of dark side of awareness. I'm never going to enjoy a coffee again. Because I was aware of the effect, and I'd never even noticed before that. That was very interesting. But I think for me, awareness is just very mysterious, kind of. It's very hard to articulate the impact. But I think, you know, breathworks, we have this model of primary and secondary suffering, and the idea that I can learn to be with my experience in the moment as momentary, because everything's flowing through the moments, and to distinguish between the unpleasant sensations of my body and then all the elaborations in the mind and the heart and the physical tension. I mean, I think I was so tense. Looking back, one of the things I've been teaching more and more is about relaxing the bum. And I think my bum was just, you know, like that for years, if not decades. And my voice was all up here and my body was rigid. Ugh. And when you're not aware, you're not aware that you're like that. So you're just going through life in this kind of rigid state. So
yeah,
very interesting. But I think awareness is double-edged, because you become more aware of everything. And I have found that a little bit disappointing. I thought I'd just get more aware of the good bits. But you know, you're more aware of your emotions and your thoughts and your body and your moods, but of course that's what builds strength, because it means that you're whole. You know, I feel much more whole than I ever was, and it means that I feel I'm more difficult to knock over. life events can't knock me over so easily, because all of me is here, rather than just the bits that I want to acknowledge, and then everything else is shoved into some kind of unaware cupboard.
Yeah.
I think it's very much like John Kabat-Zinn talks about, surfing the waves,
Yeah.
and I think that's a really true analogy, because I know how often I was knocked through, punched back myself plenty of times, never mind anybody else doing it for me. And then just the impacts from other people, or what I perceived as judgments from other people that may not have been so, criticisms that may not have been so, just my own internal reactions to everything, adding on that
Yeah.
secondary
Yeah.
experience, like without, we're not realizing that that's what's happening. And
Yeah.
so, the one thing that mindfulness, has really done is help me to deeply anchor. And like you
Yes.
said, there is something incredibly courageous and powerful that, yes, in the midst of this body that doesn't fully function, there's a lot of pain in there. And yet and I can truly say this with hand on heart, I've never felt better as a human being than I do right now,
Mm.
you know.
Wow, that's amazing, Stanter.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
and just to have that internal stuff, like I remember how, as I said, dark and judgmental, and how intense it was in there, that to finally have peace in there. And this is not to say that, don't go become a bit low or things happen, but now there's a quicker sense of observing and noticing and stepping back
Yes.
from
Yes.
not
That's
being
very good. Yeah.
involved in it.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, that quicker, that sort of noticing quicker, taking care of yourself quicker, and
Yeah.
having more of awareness of the effects of what you're doing and
Yeah.
how it helps or doesn't help.
Mhm.
And I think what you said, Vidyamala, about the primary and secondary, that's really been crucial for me as well. The sort of the thoughts of, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm in so much pain and I haven't had any sleep, and the thoughts about I can have about this is going to go on forever, or I'm not going to be able to get anything done tomorrow, all the impact, I kind of now much more able to let go of that and kind of think, no, that's secondary, that might not be true, I don't have to believe all my thoughts. I can just be in this moment, and that actually helps me relax, get back to sleep quicker, and often the next day doesn't unfold the way that I fear it might, when I'm caught in that secondary, those kinds of thoughts. So that's really helpful, to catch that. And also the labeling of, I remember you said something, I think, Vidyamala, years ago to me about, being curious about that label pain, just giving that label, what is it actually, in reality, because that label comes with so much, for me, that sort of tightening and that fight, you were talking about that tension in the body, and actually having that courage, I think, to kind of to breathe in and maybe let go of that label a little bit, and
Yes.
so what is the sensation, where is it changing, is it shifting? And it's moving, it's coming and going, and I find that really helpful. And it's difficult to do, definitely. There's definitely a lot of resistance to that at times, and it's not always possible, to be honest. When I have very acute pain, that's not necessarily the kind or sensible thing to do, but when it most of the time it is, and it's very helpful.
Mhm.
A real breakthrough for me, actually, related to this was when I realized that I'd wake up in the morning and maybe my pain was really bad. I was very tired, and I would make an assumption that my day was a write-off.
Yeah.
I did that for years, I think. So the way I was in the morning, I would just assume that was how I would be. And then, of course, it would become like that because I was just expecting it. And when I realized I was doing that, I thought, no, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to, if I notice that in the morning, I'm just going to think, well, this is how I feel right now. I might feel different a bit later on. And then invariably I do. And that's when I really start to track that, I noticed that my day has all these sort of ups and downs and waves, and that it was my thought processes that were kind of determining these endlessly awful days to some extent. I mean, obviously there's still the discomfort and the pain, but that I didn't need to project how I felt first thing in the morning into the entire day.
Yeah, that buying into it therefore leads our emotions to feel, oh no, it's going to be terrible. And then it adjusts our behavior. What we do
Yeah.
with it then changes as well, doesn't it? And I remember these significant moments, one of them being about actually kind of saying to myself, I've got about 10,000 things I can't do. I keep labeling them and going over, I can't do this, I can't do that. but actually that moment where I decided to instead look at what can I do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's these small little things. It doesn't cost a lot for us to kind of do that. And at first it might seem a bit trivial. It's like, oh, what can I do? I can, you know, get out of bed, or I can make breakfast, you know, but actually really naming those things to stop that kind of that negativity kind of spiraling out
Mm.
can just be, again, just a really wonderful experience when you begin to kind of just work with it in that way.
Mm. Yeah.
I find that very transformative as well.
Mm.
At the time of, yeah, what has been good, what is good, what else is there, broadening the perspective, because when you're in a lot of pain, it's so easy to just get really narrowed into just that's all there is. It's this huge thing. And actually sometimes for me, just to remember I can breathe and ask what else is there right now, and often there's something lovely as well that I can, you know, even it's just that I can hear birds singing outside the window,
Mhm.
sun rose today.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
eyes that can see this at the moment, you know, or, you know, there's things that I can that I can also include in my awareness, so that there's more than just the pain.
Mhm.
Yeah, good. So we'll wrap up this awareness section, but that's so helpful to hear everything. Um, just to kind of summarize just a couple of sort of key points I think that you've both brought up, that and these might seem contradictory, things I'm about to say, but the first one is that with awareness there's very often sorrow and grief and mourning, and that's completely healthy and completely normal. Because sometimes I think it can sound like it's all a bit Pollyanna-ish, and you know, awareness is going to make you happy. Well, awareness makes you stronger, more content, more fulfilled. But it's, you know, we're all three of us still live with pain, so it's learning how to live with it. And I've certainly had to go through a really big grieving process, and in some ways I don't think that ever ends. I don't think we ever stop the sadness, but there's a kind of beauty in that as well. But you know, we learn to hold that in a much bigger perspective. So that's the first thing, that awareness includes the sorrow and the grieving and the mourning. And then the second thing that surprised me about awareness, as my practice has deepened, is that I've got much more light-hearted, and I laugh much more, and I can see that in both of you. What's coming out of the screen is your courage, but also the sense of lightness. So isn't that interesting that awareness brings us both ability to mourn and to grieve, but also out of that comes lightheartedness. And I know that both of you laugh a lot, and I try to laugh a lot. And 30 years ago, if someone had said to me, you know, what's going to be the fruits of awareness practice, I would never have said I'm going to become more lighthearted. But I have, and I think that's a really lovely thing for us all to name, because it's very encouraging for others.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
So if I listen to the three of us, you know, it seems like we've all got quite established awareness practices, mindfulness practices, and we've all got lives that we find fulfilling and satisfying. But I know that it's not been straightforward for any of us. And I know for myself, I've spent years and years and years feeling a total failure. And I would have looked at an interview like this and thought, well, it's fine for them, but I feel completely useless. So just thinking of this interview being watched by others, I wouldn't want to give the impression that that we've always felt confident and fulfilled in our journey. So let's just talk a little bit about some of what we've actually been through, some of the some of the struggles. So Sophie, your journey here, you've been practicing mindfulness for a long time, and obviously it's really working for you now. But what's been some of the stages that you've gone through?
Yeah, I would say that it's taken me a long time to get to where I am now, and it's an ongoing journey. So there's something about knowing that I need some patience with myself, and that I'm going to have times when I feel like a total failure, and that it's not working or it's not helping. And sometimes when it gets, and that has happened over the years, you know, when I've just felt a bit despairing and very sorry for myself, and getting really caught in the comparing minds of, you know, but I can't walk up the stairs, and I can't get out of a chair, and, you know, all the things, being stuck in I can't. And so I think the sort of kindness and compassion has been really, really helpful with that. Non-judgment about just kind of, it's okay sometimes to feel like, it's hard, and to give yourself just a break. And the other thing that I sometimes found helpful is just knowing that when I'm really tired and I haven't slept well, or when my pain levels are high, I am going to feel like that. And that's okay. So I don't, in a way, when we're talking about our thoughts, I give myself a break from that and just say, okay, I'm very tired. I'm going to feel a bit despairing because I'm very tired, or because I haven't eaten, or because my pain's really excruciating right now. And give myself a bit of a break, and think I can come back to it. And what I was saying before about things changing, having trust and faith and patience to know that I will be able to get back on that horse again. And that's always is what happened over my experience. I've had times when practice has felt too hard, or awareness has felt too hard, but I've always got back on the horse, and it's always been helpful. And actually I've learned a lot from the times when I haven't been doing it, or not just from when I have. So yeah, it's not a linear journey. It's got lots of bumps in the road. And I like to remember what one of my teachers said a long time ago about awareness being a bit like filling a bucket, like a drop by drop by drop. And you don't always notice each single drop, but over time it makes a difference. And I think that's the other thing, is not to kind of think, oh, I don't feel better than I did like half an hour ago or an hour ago, but am I different from how I was 6 months ago or a year ago? And when I do that, yes, I always am.
Good. Yeah. Thanks, Sophie. And how about you, Stanter?
Gosh. Yeah, very similar to Sophie, really, in that it's not been a linear journey. There have been definitely, when that kind of awareness, my decision to become more aware and to try out many alternative things first began, it's really in it all the way, like going for everything. And then kind of realizing that actually there were times when I'd just get really overwhelmed. And because I didn't really have, at that point, I hadn't done any courses in this, I was just kind of trying it from books and things like that, that I'd get overwhelmed and then I would just stop, because everything felt too much. And then I would find, because before I would find that, oh, why am I getting triggered? Why am I being bothered by things that I wasn't being bothered by before? And suddenly it starts to dawn on me like, oh, I'm not practicing anymore. That's what's different right now. And that would then get me back in again, to start with the meditations again. So yeah, many, many, many years of coming back to the practices, of leaning in again and again. And each time that there's a depth of experience, there's a depth of understanding that happens. So, first it's kind of almost like this cognitive, like, oh, all that makes really good sense to me, to my mind loves it, all that information going in there. It's like, yeah, I get it, this acceptance, I get, not being judgmental of myself, and then find myself being judgmental, find myself being, all of those. And it's like, okay, so that's not, so what do I do now? How do I understand it on one level, but I don't know how to practice it all the time? And then it was like, oh, well, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
You're not, this isn't for you. Obviously everybody else gets it much better, and that's why they're at their journey. That's why they're out over there. And then slowly, surely, the sense of compassion, building that into my practices. And just kind of a bit like what Sophie was saying earlier about knowing the difference between when I am so exhausted, so done in, especially in the past, far less so than now, that I knew that my judgmental voice would be higher, the inner critic would be much, much higher. And I learned to say to myself, am I in my most balanced place right now? And if I'm not, because I knew I could tell the difference if I was or wasn't, then I wasn't going to buy into what was being said in my mind. So it's a way of kind of like, taking that foot off the pedal where you just kind of go at it with yourself in a negative way, finding these kind of tools that kind of just say, it's okay, I'm going through this. Sometimes I'm better at coping, other times I'm just not coping. But there's these mechanisms that come into play, and they get stronger and stronger. So that slowly now, I would say I'm at a point in my life where how intense the judgment was, and the negativity in my mind and the inner critic was, I mean, it was so big in my life that now I'm not, you
Mm.
know. And it's very rare the inner critic's got a voice in there, or a loud voice in there. It's still there a little bit. It might come in and feeling a bit sorry for myself, or feeling like, oh, I'm not sure if this is for me, but it's a very different kind of voice now than it's ever been. So much, much more manageable. Again, that giving us that insight into stepping back, noticing what's really going on for me right now. What do I need? And the other thing that I say to myself often is when I'm going through a space like that, where it's difficult, where it's challenging, where it feels like it's relentless, things are just not stopping, is I always kind of stop and say, what's the kindest thing I can do for myself?
Mm.
So these little things can really kind of help to get through those moments.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
have to say the other thing, just to jump in, if there's time, is just to say the other thing that's really helped me with that is the connection with other people, like this kind of conversation,
Yeah.
being real with people. And Vidyamala, you've helped me so much with that. Your life story that I've listened to on the Breathworks website, all the different stages, and someone that I look up to so much, who has also, as you said earlier, the journey with acceptance is always ongoing. So kind of giving ourselves a break as well, and sharing with others.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things that I've really had to work with over the years is feeling a failure. That was huge in my life. I think it's partly my life, my conditioning, ambitious, high achieving at school, all that kind of thing, and probably justifying my existence on some level. And then, of course, my body just stopped working. And then for many, many years, I just felt, I compare myself with others and feel just so useless. And one of my other insights is that I realized the person I was comparing myself with and always coming up short was a kind of fantasy combination of about 20, the good qualities of about 20 people. So I set this imaginary person I thought I should be like doesn't even exist. So that was good to realize that. But it's very soul destroying, feeling a failure. And then I got into the thing that you mentioned earlier, Stanter, of trying to do all these things to help my back and my pain, but I was doing them in order to get rid of my pain. So I always felt a failure. So then I'd just try even harder. So this horrible kind of pushy, strained, useless, feeling a failure, push harder. And then I'd have these massive crashes every now and then. I'll push, 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 and then I'd go to bed for weeks. It was a very big, sort of quite extreme cycle. So I think, feeling a failure, a lot of us have that when our bodies have prevented us from doing what we dreamed of. But I can feel quite good humoured about that, and I don't feel a failure now. I think Breathworks has been very good for me from that point of view, because I have ended up, doing something probably way better than if I'd gone off and become a vet, which is what I wanted to do at school. Because I've done this, mining the inner world work, which is perhaps the most wonderful thing we can do. But yes, that's why I wanted to draw that out, because I think many of us do feel failures, and I wouldn't want people to look at us and think we haven't been there, because we have.
Yeah. And I think also, just as a final point to that, just addressing the other side of the coin, which is we've all said it's taken years, to get to where we are, is to not kind of put people off from starting to do this work,
Yeah.
thinking, oh my God, is it going to take 10, 20 years before anything changes? Is that there is change that happens
Yes.
often.
Yes.
And it adds to it, and it adds to it, and it adds
Yes.
to it, and it deepens and it grows. So it's not like, Sophie said it earlier, but it's not just 1 to 10 and then I've got there. It's like, no, there's all of these little
Yes.
places
Yes.
that growth happens in. So, please don't think that you have to do a 10-year stint before anything changes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, that's a very important point.